Planning Commission for January 19th to order. Can I have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Lerner,
And Nancy, you need to come off of mute. Nancy, you're still on mute.
Okay, here I am.
All right, so you're here. Okay.
Commissioner Narensek.
Here.
It appears that Commissioner Consey and Vice Chair Lamb are absent. Chair Lane.
Here.
We should have
All
told
right,
him to put the
all right,
microphone
good.
closer
Then
to his mouth. Got in
we'll
trouble
go
hearing.
ahead and do what we normally do. We have a
Bye.
public- Hello, Nancy, you're here. What we normally do is we have a public comment section for items not on the agenda, in case there's something that wants to be brought up that we look into later on some things that were presented to the commission previously, or something we didn't know about. One time, somebody brought up chickens, and it got to be a meeting around the ordinance around chickens. So this section is for items not on the agenda, but that we want to hear about anything that need to be told to the commission at this time. So I'll open the public comment section for items not on the agenda. Anybody's here to talk on that, I'll go ahead and recognize them. And nobody's running up to the microphone right now, so I'll go ahead and close the public comment section on item 2.
Just note for the agenda, Commissioner.
Yes.
That's you.
I'm going to go ahead and open up the public comment after the commission hears the recommendation. There you go. Okay, thank you. And that's so Perry has a picture of who's online also. With that, then the procedure we'll use tonight is we'll go ahead and hear from the planning staff, give us an overview of what happened last night at the town council meeting, plus whatever has to be presented that is an additional presentation to the planning commission. And then we'll go ahead and have any questions from commissioners. Then we'll open up the public comment section. There's speaker cards over here. And so go ahead and fill out one of those so I make sure I get to talk to everybody. While we have 3 minutes sort of timer warning. I'm going to try to keep us at 3 minutes so we get out of here before midnight. But I also want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to talk. Thank you. Wait, I actually found one that I had printed. Thank you. So with that, then I'll go ahead and start with the staff overview of what happened last night and what we should know about. So Lisa is a special consultant who used to be very special to this city in another way, in that she was the head of the planning before she rolled off into this role. And she's here until the 31st. So every day we get with her is a good thing, because she's a great planning leader. And let's hear what we have to hear.
Thank you. Good evening. Lisa Costa Sanders, planning consultant. I'll be giving the staff presentation. Yeah, can you go ahead?
We got a slideshow.
Yeah, we have a presentation. Thank you. So all California cities are required to accommodate their fair share of regional housing needs as determined by the state and ABAG. This housing element period covers an 8-year period from 2023 to 2031. Go to the next one. And this is our housing needs allocation, again, as determined by ABAG. It's divided into the different income categories. So you'll see the top has very low income, 94 units, low 54 units, moderate income 56, above moderate 144, for a total of 348. And this is quite a bit of an increase, as the last housing element cycle, our requirement was 94 units. So the state has really upped the RHNA allocations for all jurisdictions, including the town of Atherton. So the process we've gone through is we started the housing element discussions in April of 2021 with a joint meeting with City Council and Planning Commission to get some direction. The RHNA allocation was finalized December 16th of 2021. And following that, we've held numerous City Council, Planning Commission, and community meetings to discuss the programs and the strategies to meet our housing allocation. The draft housing element was released for public review on June 10th of last year. And based on feedback received, the City Council removed multifamily overlay, removed changes to the PFS, or the school zoning districts, and expanded the ADU program. That housing element was submitted to HCD on August 2nd. The town received HCD comment letter on October 31st. The main points from that comment letter was that HCD requested additional analysis, expressed concern with the projected ADU numbers, as well as SB9 numbers that the town was relying on, and noted that we were deficient by not providing multifamily sites and affirmatively furthering fair housing. The council held several meetings to review the HCD comment letter, the legal status of those comments, and that included community outreach meetings. And following that, they added 2 new multifamily zones, expanded housing opportunities at the private schools, reduced the SB9 projections, and expanded discussion on the ADU programs. And I'll walk through each of those. So as I indicated, the housing element primary programs is accessory dwelling unit production, and that covers all the different income categories. Multifamily housing at the school sites, multifamily housing along El Camino, add a new multifamily designation of RM20, as well as at 23 Oakwood with a new designation of RM10, as well as lot splits that are under the SB9 state law. Let's start with the ADU program. The plan includes assumption of a development of 35 new ADU and JDU units per year during the next housing element cycle for a total of 280 units. And we have those listed across the different income categories. The plan also calls for zoning amendments to allow 2 ADUs per lot and remove the occupancy limitation on guest houses so that a guest house can be considered an ADU if it has a kitchen, a bedroom, bathing facilities. Also update ADU regulations to permit ADUs above garages. So that would include a change to allow a 2-story detached structure and as well as an increase in the height limit. As well as to further encourage the rental of ADUs, not just construction, the town will partner with a local nonprofit organization to assist in matching property owners with interested renters. And we've already begun those conversations. So the next measure would be multifamily housing at school sites within the PFS zoning district. And this would include amending the PFS zone to allow multifamily housing at the schools by right. It would include objective design standards, as well as adjusting the setbacks and the height limits to accommodate the new housing development. We've identified 2 sites at the Menlo College campus that could accommodate a total of 60 new housing units during this planning period, as well as identified 2 sites at the Menlo School campus that could accommodate 20 new housing units during the planning period. And then next, recently added by the council is 2 new multifamily zoning districts, RM20 and RM10. They've identified properties along the western side of El Camino Real from Stockbridge to the Redwood city limits for multifamily at 20 units per acre, and also included a lot consolidation program, as well as rezone 23 Oakwood for multifamily housing at 10 units per acre. So that would include the policy in the general plan, and then at a later date, the implementing zoning would need to be adopted. And that would include appropriate setbacks, height limits, landscape screening. It could include some changes to fence height regulations, as well as adopt a new inclusionary ordinance that would require 20% of the multifamily units be designated as affordable to lower income households. The next program is reliance on lot splits or SB9. So California Senate Bill SB9 permits splitting of single family lots into 2 parcels and the construction of up to 2 dwelling units on each parcel. So if there's 1 house there now, you could get a net increase of 3 dwelling units. The town adopted implementing regulations to encourage new development to comply with current development standards. And the town estimates a total of 48 new housing units from SB9 projects over the next 8 years. This table gives you an outline of the different programs, the projection estimates, and how those would be laid across on the different income categories. So you see really relying on the ADU program to generate 280 units across all the different income categories. Lot splits would primarily be above market, as well as we still have a few vacant properties in town that we would assume would develop at the rate of about a little over 1 per year. And then as I indicated, the RM10 zoning district at 23 Oakwood, that could develop at 16 units, 12 would be above moderate, 4 would be in the lower income category with the inclusionary ordinance. And then development on the El Camino Real properties, this would assume 2 or 3 would be consolidated, and you could generate 19 units, 15 above moderate, 4 would be in the lower income categories. And then Menlo School, we have 60 units spread between the very low, low and moderate categories, as well as Menlo School, 20 units, very low and low. And then you see the totals at the bottom. So legal notice of this meeting was published in the Almanac newspaper, and the town also advertised this meeting via the town's newsflash and Atherton Online. It is recommended that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution and recommend City Council adopt the 2023 to 2031 housing element. Following that, the next steps, the City Council will consider the Planning Commission's recommendation at a special meeting on January 31st. The housing element is required to be adopted by January 31st, and the state then has 60 days to certify the element as in compliance with state law. If the housing element is still deemed non-compliant, HCD will provide an additional response letter, and the town and HCD will begin a further dialogue and revision process to achieve certification. The town has, excuse me, 120 days from January 31st to obtain a certified housing element. Failure to do so would shorten the time allotted from 3 years to 1 year for the town to adopt the implementing zoning. And if the town does not have a certified housing element, the town is exposed to potential litigation or builder's remedy development standards. And here's the formal motion should you choose to make that. I do have Barbara Kautz. She's our special legal counsel from Goldfarb and Littman on the line, as well as Diana Elrod. She's a consultant that has quite a bit of knowledge in the housing element laws, worked with other jurisdictions. So if Barbara Kautz at this time could discuss, we have a few additional clarifying items we would like to include in the housing element before the final adoption. Unfortunately, it didn't make it in time for this version.
Okay.
So if Barbara can give a brief overview of what those are before the Planning Commission makes its recommendations so that you understand anything that would be changed after this vote.
All right,
So,
great.
Barbara, if you could go over that list for us now.
Excuse me.
And I don't have pictures of people up. Can you drop the presentation? Thank you. Okay, good.
There. Hi. So thanks, commissioners. So we've been looking through the letter from HCD, which always demands more and more analysis. I think some of the changes that the staff would like to continue to make in the housing element include an additional description of the new multifamily sites that were added. There was really only about a day after the council meeting for those changes to be made. And so there needs to be some additional description, just thinking about what HCD is looking for. And also the state law demands an analysis of the sites to affirmatively further fair housing. So that analysis will need to be expanded to include the new sites. Other, what I'd call smaller things are HCD has asked for that we probably need to expand is some of the impact of past actions on special needs populations, why Atherton is a higher income community, some issues about access to transit, issues about extremely low income households, and some more information about housing conditions. So most of this, I would just say, is additional analysis. We're not talking about making changes to the programs, just some additional analysis that's been requested by HCD.
All right. Anything else then?
Thank you. That concludes the staff presentation.
All right, I had some questions, just for clarifications. As my understanding that the ADU regulations that we're talking about here with the above garage is required by the new regulations from the state. Is that correct? That's not something we decided to randomly do, right? That's now required to be allowed. Is that correct?
Do you have that?
I think the town had talked about doing this even before the state law passed.
But it is.
But
it
yeah.
is not. But
What
it's
the
now
state law
required.
requires is that attached ADUs, which would include an ADU above a garage, have to be allowed to be either 25 feet high or the height limit in the city's ordinance.
All right. And on the SB 9 splits, as I understand it, the SB 9 splits require the current landowner to be living on the property after it's split for a period of 2 years, and one of the properties of the split for 2 years. Is that still the case?
That is still the
3
case.
years.
3
Yeah.
years? Okay.
Yeah.
Did we look at the idea of providing a similar opportunity for like 2 acre lots or more without the requirement?
We did not discuss that.
Okay, so that would be so one of the drawbacks of SB 9 is that requirement. That's the biggest one for this area. So I'll come back to that later on after we hear some public comment. All right, any other questions of staff? Nancy, you're good? She's not raising her hand, so I'm gonna let her go. All right, so then I'll go ahead and then let's go ahead. Anything else? Nothing else from staff, correct? All right, good. Then let's go ahead and go over the approach on this. Do I have some cards up here now? Okay. I'll take them. Let me go over how we want to approach this. First of all, nobody in this room and none of the commission wants to do this. So we didn't wake up in the middle of the night and say, hey, I got a great idea. Let's screw up the planning in the town. So this is something that's being driven by a state directive. And the downside of it is two things. First of all, if we don't have a plan by the 31st, the developer could come in and say, hey, I can do anything I want. I was down in Redondo Beach seeing my daughters, and this is a builder suing for an apartment plan complex that they say they have the right to build just because they didn't get around to approving a plan that meets the state standards. So what we want to do is we want to have something in place we can use. And the second part of it is we have to be accepted by the state, or they end up coming in and doing it for us. So the objective here is to get on record the things that you want to say. If you agree with somebody that has spoken before you, say, I agree, and then give us the next point. We want to get everybody on record. So when the state comes and says, well, did anybody really object? We want to hear that. The only thing is I'll ask you is you don't have to get angry at us. All right. So you can make your statement and go it on the record, and then know that we're all struggling with the next steps. All right. Because if what we submit now isn't accepted, they'll come in and say, no, you've got to do much more than that. So we've got to meet the standard of the state in this next pass, so that they don't have us do that and make it worse for even more people. All right. So let's make sure that we're, one, doing good democracy by getting a chance to speak. Two, making sure we're treating each other as good neighbors. And three, staying within the 3-minute time limit. All right. And then we'll have a good meeting. With that, then you got some more? All right. I'll go ahead and start with the cards. For those of you online, if you want to speak, there's do you have the comments up on your screen? All right, good. So go ahead and indicate your interest in speaking. And what I'll do is I'll do three people in the room here, and then I'll ask to see if there's anyone that would like to speak online, and we'll do 3 online, and then we'll come back to the room. And that way everybody will be heard, no matter where they are and whatever technology they're using. I'm going to go ahead and officially open the public comment section. And at the end of this, what will happen is that we'll close the public comment section. We'll bring it back to the commission for discussion and action as appropriate, which could be anything from giving suggestions to staff on some ideas we heard to take to the town council, who has the final say on the 31st. And then voting on the item. All right. With that, we'll start with Pam Civrioli. All right. Good evening.
My name is Pam Civrioli, and I live at 99 Gresham Lane, and I am one of the victims. I have here a signed petition by all the homeowners who live on my street, Gresham Lane. And it basically, we the undersigned.
Chair, we can't hear the speaker.
Okay.
We the
hold on 1 second. Let's make sure the microphone's on. So starting, sorry, Pam, thank you. And then we won't count it against your 3 minutes, by the way.
Okay, there we go.
Re-kick that 3 minutes.
All right, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Pamela Silveroli. I live at 99 Gresham Lane, and I am one of the victims in this process. I am holding in my hand a signed petition by each and every one of the homeowners on my street. And each and one of us have said emphatically that we're not selling. Emphatically, absolutely not. We're not selling to any developer. That is the premise that we're running from.
Great.
So with that, between the financial infeasibility of building low-income housing or on incredibly expensive acres, and after hearing from the families on the street saying that they do not plan to move, a reasonable person could only conclude that there is no potential or likelihood of these non-vacant sites being developed in the next 8 years for Atherton to continue to say in the housing element, after having all this information, that they assume lower income housing is going to be built is a gross misrepresentation of the reality of the situation. Are you, the Planning Commission, after hearing all of this, going to recommend that the town submit this upzoning proposal with the full knowledge that the development of these lots won't happen? What about our planning consultant, Ms. Sanders? Are you comfortable in recommending to the council that the element should be approved if the factual basis for this non-vacant site analysis is not submitted in good faith? Barbara, are you? Diana, and I'm just, hopefully I get all this correct. Nazanini, I don't know who that. Okay.
Just speak to the commission.
My point being is that, are you all comfortable? Do you feel comfortable advising the town to submit this with this information that the town knows to be factually inaccurate at best? We just can't wrap our minds around the fact that you would present something in bad faith to the state, because what we feel is that it's factually incorrect and you're misrepresenting the truth. So that's where we stand. And we feel as though that it's not going to pass.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Okay. Well, you got a question?
Do we have did you put a copy of that into the record?
I can't.
We need a copy in the record.
All right, we'll get that. Well, we're not, okay. Hold on. All right, so you guys work it out. You guys work it out outside, or I'm gonna keep the meeting going. And if you got anything to submit at the end or later, it doesn't have to be tonight, but later, we got. Okay, good, then. All right, very good. All right, Stan Sue? Stan.
Planning Commission, thank you for your time. My name is Stan Shu. I live on 73 Gresham, along with a lot of my neighbors who are here tonight, and we were here last night as well. I'm not going to repeat a lot of what we discussed then. What I'm going to point out is we've commented on bad faith. And in hearing the conversation yesterday, we've talked about the consequences of upzoning all of our properties within RM20. I can't even begin to describe the emotional turmoil you put all of us through this last week. We commented last night where we received the notification without a map, and to our surprise and the graciousness of one of our neighbors, we happened to find it. So you can imagine what we're feeling for this last week.
Right.
If you upzone our properties, do you understand the economic injury you are causing every one of us? And for me, who happens to be one of the younger participants within the street, who have hopes and aspirations to leave it to my children, the impact you are making. If you upzone our properties, I am effectively unable to make any remodeling, any updates without being subjected to the new upzoning code. You have boxed every single one of us and devalued our properties just like that. For us who happen to be in properties which you believe is convenient. We've talked about the economic miscalculation you're making. You've heard from us. None of us want to sell. And in knowing that you've targeted our properties, we do have a request. We're surprised that nobody within the targeted zone is part of the planning commission. We ask that you make sure you ensure you take a good subset of all the varying categories of population within Atherton, those from the smallest lots, which is us, to those with those extremely large lot sizes. It seems like a very miscalculated, judgment on your part. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. And keep in mind, the planning commission found out about this about the same time you did, because it wasn't part of the submission that we saw last time. All right, the next one is Joseph, whose last name will be forever a mystery, or until he gets up to the mic.
So yeah, hi, my name's Joe Laria. I live at 2 Selby Lane. I'd like to say that I disagree with the multifamily zoning for the RM20. Okay, I'm raising a family here because I wanted a life here. And we're here for the long term. We're not planning on selling. We want to keep this in our family. The upzoning proposal along ECR up to Stockbridge to the town border disproportionately puts the burden of meeting the state requirement for multifamily low income on our small community. You know, the plan is not economically feasible to build dense housing there. Consolidating the lots is not possible because we're not selling. Also, the fact that we have heritage trees on the property is going to make it impossible for a developer to come in and consolidate the lot. So it's not economically feasible. Also, with the upzoning, if my kids want to rebuild the house because the house is old and they want to rebuild it, they're not able to do that. So this puts a burden on our whole family and our neighbors. Instead, I think the planning board can actually think about some broad principles that we can all agree on. One is we do believe in economic diversity. We respect the homeowners' rights, and everyone in the town has a shared responsibility to meet the state requirement.
Okay.
So some solutions, consider an overlay, an expansive overlay over large sections of the town, not an upzoning, but an overlay. We know the places, the thoroughfares, all of El Camino, all of Alameda, Valparaiso, Atherton Avenue, Bay Road, we know all of those. Just expand it because somebody might be interested to build. And if you have a large enough area, the expected probability is you might meet your numbers. It's a better shot. And I think you can do that and not limit the homeowners' choice and rights. And then another thing to consider for the long term is maybe a bond issue to support multifamily development at the Gilmore House, Bear Gulch Reservoir, Menlo College, and other undeveloped sites. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming with the proposals too. All right, I said I would, that's the third speaker, so I'd switch over and see if there's anybody online that would like to speak at this point. Do you see anybody's hand raising? Okay, so let's go with who was the first person? I can't hear you.
Mickey and Elizabeth Key.
All right, go ahead. I just want one of them first, so if they want to both talk, that's fine. So Mickey, I want to see them if I can.
Yeah, I'm asking them to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I said I had a very brief comment. I don't even need to make it. I think the people in front of me have articulated the issues very, very well. It is just a shame that this is going forward. Thank you for hearing me.
All right, thank you, Mickey. All right, who was the other person?
That's it.
That's it? All right, so I'll go ahead. There's no one else online?
I actually have a Lauren Gruner.
Right. Lauren, you go ahead. Introduce yourself and you've got the mic.
She's unmuting.
Lauren, you might be on mute.
Let's see. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Yeah, my name is Lauren Gruner and I've lived in Atherton for 25 years and I've watched this whole process of what the town really wanted with ADUs and live-in units and so on for many years. I know when I was building my home, I wanted to have an in-law unit. I wasn't allowed to have an in-law unit and a guest house. If I had a guest house, I couldn't rent it out. So it's a huge, huge change of direction for the overall town. I do think that at this point, the fact that we are faced with this, I do like the fact that we're pushing ADUs and trying to build those as an alternative to necessarily having this, multi-property zoning. A couple things that I think could make the ADUs the numbers go up so that people are actually using them are a few things. One, I think when you create ADUs, I think it's really important to allow for separate utilities. And I don't know if that's allowed at this point for the actual unit. So if you're renting out a property, you can have your renter pay for utilities themselves. Historically, in the past, that wasn't allowed in Atherton. I think too that many people actually do have extended family stay in their ADUs, whether that's their parents or their children coming back from college or their young adults and kids coming back, but they don't necessarily, report that as a rental situation. And I think it's great that you're talking about taking off the 30-day exclusion as far as time. But I think if the city could help to put together, in a sense, like sample leases or paperwork or something, so when people do have guests for an extended period of time, or they have family and so on, and maybe some of those rents are lower, but that may help us to reach our low income calculation. So if you have 2 kids home from college and you're having them pay a few $100s a month for rent, great. Let's meet our calculations that way, rather than forcing a lot of other people to change their whole neighborhood. I also think that I don't really love the 3.814A inclusionary fee for single family homes when people are building. I think it's nice to put the incentives in place for people to actually rent out their property. There are a lot of older people in the community, I think, who would be very happy to rent out their guest house and have somebody else on the property that's there to make sure that they're safe and so on, if it's allowed and it's legal. And I think that taking away, like making it tougher for homeowners to actually develop their property, I don't necessarily agree with that. I understand you may want to do that on some of these different new zones, but I think in general, I should allow supply and demand to take care of that. I do think that I don't think it's fair necessarily that this corridor along El Camino is the only one that's being targeted. I think it'd be great. Why don't we just put an overlay over the entire town and let every community have, if there's somebody that has a flag lot, acre property somewhere, and it's not gonna, we already have pretty good rules about screening in Atherton. And if we could allow some of those to develop organically, rather than to say, hey, the only way we can do it is along a thoroughfare. I know the state has a lot of rules about that, but I do think that we could also say, well, let's
I'm
put.
sorry, excuse me, 3-minute time is up.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Just wrap it up. I want to make sure you knew what the 3 minutes ago came up, but we let you go a little longer. Go ahead, wrap up, Lauren.
Yeah, no, I think that I've covered most of the points. I feel like it would be nice for us to work as a community where everyone shares the burden of allowing us to get there. And I think if we educate the population about how they can use their ADUs to benefit us, I think we can get to our numbers without necessarily having to do a lot of extra changes to our ordinances.
All
Thank
right, great. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you for going over some solutions. For some, I just saw somebody come in. I just want to make sure people know where we are in the process. We're in the public comment section where everyone who would like to speak, you fill out a card, and we're focusing on 3-minute sessions. And you agree with somebody that spoke before you, say that, and then make your own point. And we're trying to make sure that we stay not only complete in terms of what we put on the agenda, on the record, but also stay great neighbors. So with that, Jennifer, you're up.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Ryan. I'm a homeowner on Gresham Lane, one of the units that's being affected by the upzoning. I just wanted to come here because it sounds like you were not aware of the situation prior to a few days ago, but all of the 17 lots on El Camino are under an acre. Most of them are 1 1/3 acre less. They each sell for $4 million. If we have a developer that tries to cobble together 4 lots to make a 1.2 acre lot, he's going to have to pay, he or she is going to have to pay $16 million. Meanwhile, over off Middlefield, there's a 1.4 acre lot selling for $7.35 million. No builder in their right mind is going to pick our little lots as opposed to that lot, especially if they have to incorporate 20% low income housing in the development. And keep in mind, the large tear down lots like the one on Middlefield are being put up for sale far more often in Atherton than the homes on our street. Could the state make an argument that when Atherton is only offering up its more expensive parcels that cost 2 times more per square foot than other acreage in town, this housing element was not drafted in good faith? We have declarations by the owners of the affected properties on Gresham saying that they don't plan to sell. They're family homes, we want to leave them to our kids, so they're just not going to sell. After hearing all of this, can you honestly say that the non-vacant site analysis in the housing element is that these lots are likely to be developed was added in good faith? It just feels like the lots were put on the element just to put something on the element. It won't accomplish anything. And as a previous speaker said, something else that might actually accomplish something is the overlay idea. Why not overlay all of the major arteries in Atherton or the entirety of Atherton? This will give developers the ability to work with the town to get something built. How is upzoning 6.7 acres of tiny lots that will never be developed better than an overlay that will make more sites available and let residents who want to redevelop their lots give them the opportunity to do so, rather than targeting families who don't? It is
1
my
minute.
understanding, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but Southern California is 2 years ahead of us in this process, and only 47% of the cities are approved. None of the others have been fined. Only 1 city has been hit with buyer's remedies, but for issues unrelated to ours. Why not submit a significant overlay and use that time to figure out something workable instead of severely restricting the property rights and lives of 17 families in order to accomplish nothing? Nothing. They are not going to approve this house.
Jennifer, I need you to wrap it up. Yeah. All right.
Right. This housing element, the multifamily non-vacant site sections can't be written. You cannot write it in good
I
faith.
need you to wrap up, Jennifer.
I'm almost done.
All right.
And you can't do it in all honesty after hearing all of these comments that people, I see the timer, all of the comments that people have made about not wanting to sell their houses and the
All right,
financial
Jennifer, I need you to
impossibility.
stop now. All right, thank you.
I do
I'm-
have 5 seconds. There's a timer up here.
She's given the 3 minutes over here. I know, no. Right. Didn't you give me a 3-minute note?
I did the 3 minutes, yes.
Yeah, okay. All right. You know what? I've got to make sure that we cover everybody. We had 3 minutes on the timer over here. I was going by that. Tom and Stephanie, you both want to speak? Oh, we're familiar with you, yes. Yeah.
Hi,
I've seen you a couple times.
yes, thank you, Commissioners. Tom Georgie with Stephanie Sargent, 425 East Oakwood Boulevard. I think you know what I'm going to say. I
Yeah.
don't think you should recommend 10 units per acre at 23 Oakwood. Council's decision to add that property at 10 units per acre was a last minute hasty decision. The council failed to have the foresight to make the large scale rezoning of El Camino, Valparaiso, maybe even Alameda, that would appease HCD. And they found themselves backed into a corner, and they want to put density where it doesn't belong. Adding density is what HCD wants. Multifamily sites that the council has added is insufficient to have the housing element approved. It's going to come back rejected. They failed to address the degree of change that the mandate required. By rezoning as multifamily overlays, so people have the option, the major arteries at a small step denser than what people can do with an SB9 split already, and ADUs and JADUs, with inclusionary ordinances that require, so if you've got a 1 acre parcel, you can do 6 or 7 units. One of those has to be low income. You know, that's an equitable way. And it allows people the option to either develop density or keep existing use. One look at 23 Oakwood, it's obvious it's a bad plan. We've spoken with 60 neighbors who agree with that. Property has at least 26 heritage trees on it, at least that I can count from my bedroom window. Property has jurisdictional complications where nearly half the property actually sits in Redwood City. The Oakwood Oval and Oakwood neighborhood as one of the most desirable neighborhoods in Redwood City. Sorry, 1 minute left.
I was just saying 1 minute.
Thank you. The Oakwood Oval and Oakwood neighborhood is it's one of the most desirable in Redwood City. And it's a walking circle. And there's existing traffic bollards there. Adding 30+ cars is a safety concern. This is a neighborhood that is not located on a major artery. This is a quiet street. It's a neighborhood that's prone to flooding. Redwood City Council members are nonplussed that Atherton is planning to drop this bomb right at their border. And the inclusion of this property as multifamily housing before the city develops its own land at Gilmore House is a horrible look. The optics reinforce an appearance of Atherton as an elitist community, as much as I hate to say it, but that's what the optics are. And to jam this, its required unwanted development up against the periphery of its border instead of a more equitable and far-sighted planning along the major arteries. So this is the wrong plan for this parcel, period. Please don't recommend it. Thank you.
Stephanie, did you want to speak?
I have.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So
I have a few people on Zoom.
I can't quite read this name. Can you read that name? Maybe I got the wrong glasses on, that's why.
Ognian Pavlov.
Yeah. There you go.
Thank you.
I had my, it wasn't your handwriting, it was my glasses. I forgot I had the less strong ones on.
Good catch. So, Ognian Pavlovich, 8 Selby Lane, Atherton, been here for 18 years. And, something caught my attention when you said good neighbors. We want to be good neighbors at this meeting. The thing that I want to say is that good neighbors share the pain. This proposal does not share the pain across all of the neighbors. Nobody wants to do it, but you're doing it to us. Sharing the pain is actually what good neighbors are, and I expect you guys to do the same. So, a couple of things. This January 12th, Mona Ibrahimi stated, by the way, I sent this email, hopefully the whole email gets into it. There's a lot more detail there. She stated, it's very important to HCD that the programs that are offered in town, housing element, are capable of being accomplished and are feasible. So they don't want us to simply identify projects for the sake of identifying projects that we believe there's no way realistically coming to fruition. Including El Camino is a project that has absolutely no way of succeeding. 2 reasons. The owners don't want, several reasons. The owners don't want to sell, number 1. Size of the lots. Every document that was HCD pushback from this Beverly Hills, Menlo Park, Santa Monica, talked about size of the lots, every one of them. These are small lots. We're including a plan that includes size of small lots. Why? Number 3, low income affordable housing. As somebody mentioned there, if you actually calculate the value of each one of those houses per unit, 20 units per acre, the cost of the land is $518,000 at current prices. $518,000. Lisa stated June 23rd that for a 2-bedroom max unit, low income is $82,000, 131 for low, 134 median. $500,000. If you take the income of those levels, 30%, these people can afford $500,000. I mean, what do you expect them to pitch a tent?
Speak to the commission, not speak to the commission. That's
sorry, is it going to be a tent pitched over there, or are you going to build units?
Right.
And last thing about it is that you're creating a plan that's unfeasible, that in the last meeting that Barbara talked about it, started laughing about, yeah, include a plan and then continue with that plan, even if it gets rejected, while boxing all of us here into a plan that's not feasible at all. Continue with it. That's actually not acceptable for any one of us here. It's irresponsible it's in bad faith, both to the HCD and to the community that you serve. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Kathy Castillo.
Hi, I'm Kathy Castillo. I live at 350 East Oakwood Boulevard. I agree with quite a bit of the discussion I've heard so far. The one part that I've not heard an explanation of, and maybe that I just didn't look in the right place, is where the traffic for the 23 Oakwood goes in and out of the property. Oakwood Boulevard is unimproved. It's sort of 1.5 lanes. It has no sidewalks. If you're gonna dump not only the people who live there, but the trucks that come to deliver stuff and all of that into that street, it's not gonna work. Another thought that just occurred to me in listening to some of the comments was, is there any way to do something like carbon offsets for this? You're surrounded by pieces of county property and Redwood City property that sort of butt up against, you're obviously looking at El Camino as the place to do all the dirty work. Is there any way that Atherton get credit for something that actually gets built in the county?
We looked at that and the answer, not in this round. That's something that's been looked at in the past, but it won't pass muster on this one. Because that would be a natural for sure. Yeah,
Okay, but can anybody tell me where the traffic's supposed to go?
yeah, but that will be part of the plan.
Because if it goes to Selby Lane, I mean, I know you protect Selby Lane as if it were a lane, but it's got a stripe down the middle and shoulders, which is a whole lot better.
Right.
Or best yet, dump it onto El Camino.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jing Yi. And Jing, you came in after I instructed everyone. So come on up. I just want to make sure you know that we're looking at 3 minutes for a presentation. If you agree with anybody that spoke before, say that and make your next point so that we get all the points on the record.
Absolutely.
All right, thank
Thanks
you.
so much. Yeah, my name is Jing Yi. I'm here on behalf of my husband and my 2 daughters. One goes to middle school and one goes to high school at Sacred Heart. One of the major reason we actually moved to Atherton so that our kids can enjoy really close distance from school. We own the house at 37 Gresham Lane. We have lived here for about a year and definitely really like the community. So for today, I just want to point out a couple of points. First of all, my lot size is barely 1/3 acre. So in order for this project to be practical, you would have to get at least 3 houses that barely made 1 acre. And the house sold recently on the market is at least around 4 million. So 3 houses will give you already over to 10 million. So I just really want to challenge this, whether this is a practical, feasible approach. Second of all, I want to see is we've been here for a year. We've been talking to our neighbor. We all have little kids. As I said, I have 2 kids who actually have a long way before they graduate. None of us really have any intention to sell the house because one of the reasons we moved here is because our kids' school are here. Then if none of us gonna sell our house, this plan not gonna be very feasible. Thirdly, I would like to see the Gresham Lane is not through street. Every morning when we drop our kids to school, the traffic is a really big problem. Getting the apartment or any multifamily house there gonna actually make the problem even worse. Even getting out from Gresham Lane onto Shelby every morning, making left or left, you really have to ask others to be graciously let you in.
Right.
And then when you finally get to that point, you want to make a left turn on El Camino, good luck.
No,
Right, it's impossible.
Don't do it.
Right, right, exactly. So I think having a high density housing there is gonna make this problem really worse. And we worry about our own kids' safety. They walk on the neighborhood. We also worry about the family who drop their kids to the there is elementary school on Shelby, right? So I think lastly, I want to call out, this is really we all caught out a surprise. There's really lack of good faith in communicating and thinking about this plan. And also just for the record, we all full supportive of this low income housing strategy, but we just don't feel this is the feasible, practical, economically feasible plan for solving this issue.
Right.
Yeah. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you, thank you. Thank you. I've got 3 people online. I don't have the names, but you want to call off one of them?
Can Stephanie be ready to present?
Stephanie, you ready? If you're on mute, you need to come on mute. I don't see you.
She's on.
Hi, I just want to address the rise in housing at Menlo School and College. I think that this is very poorly researched and analyzed. I know for a fact that the acreage for the school and the college has been double counted for their shared acres. Also, the code enforcement and police department that you have in place, there wasn't even any code enforcement for at least a year. And I'm not sure there is a code enforcement person now. The town cannot handle the violations that happen at Menlo. The police say they won't come for noise violations. They're not going to enforce it. You want to add all this additional housing, but you can't cope with the violations that are already happening there. Also, there's inadequate parking. I'm not sure where you're planning on putting all the parking and all the housing. There was mention of 6 potential sites, but as far as I know, that hasn't been shared with the public. I requested all the documents for this meeting and I did not receive any of that. So what I'm saying is, again, here you're putting a burden in this one little part. Menlo has just built a very high capacity dorm, which has already been added to the school. And for you to infer that it's underdeveloped with the great increase that has occurred over the last 20 years is completely false and in bad faith. I agree with the people that have been cut off. Jennifer in particular, she was raising excellent points about how there haven't been any fines, and this threat of fines that hangs over, that you're saying is such a threat when these situations are completely underanalyzed and you can't really make these recommendations in good faith. You've just added a third, 33% more of the
Stephanie, not to
housing.
Interrupt, you have 1 more minute.
Of the housing at Menlo. It's just not in good faith. And you're putting the burdens in very small spots and it's just in bad faith.
All right, so
I'm finished.
for the record, Stephanie, can you say your whole name just so we have it on record?
My name is Stephanie King Disher.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Stephanie. All right, I see Anna, it looks like Anna Paulson. Anna, why don't you go ahead and go? You're on mute right now, so come off mute and then go ahead.
Yes, hi. My name's Ann Paulson. And I just would like to have a clarification because I heard a couple of people say that if their property were upzoned, they wouldn't be able to, let's say, rebuild their own house. Could you clarify whether this zoning would there be a minimum? Because I was under the impression that the minimum of a number of houses you could build on your lot would be 1, and then the maximum would be the 20 dwelling units per acre. So if you can just clarify that, thank you.
Yeah, any code, any zoning change would be the maximum allowed on that site. And then anything within that range would be consistent with the approach. So, the other aspect of it is the nature of the housing that's on that site. But the landowner gets to choose what they want to propose. All right, thank you. And there's a third person that I can't see with a hand up. Who is it?
Carol Collins.
All right, Carol, you're up. Take yourself off mute.
Yes,
All right, good.
you can. I do object to the housing plan as submitted. I think you're giving an unfair burden to a small group of people, and the city should take it on jointly. And I fully support housing in the park. I think that spreads it out, and somebody's idea of introducing a bond to pay for it, maybe that's the way we need to go. I just don't think we're being very creative. And thank you for your work. I appreciate it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Carol. All right.
Oh, and I'm at 78 Deodora Drive.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Carol. All right, and we got a card in the room, Remy. You're up. And I think you came in just after I made the presentation of the structure of how we're going to come on up. We're basically making sure that everyone gets to speak for at least 3 minutes, and try not to repeat what I've said before you, but give us the points that's on record of your opinion.
Thank you very much.
And go ahead,
I'd like to
introduce yourself.
Okay, so Remy Thomas, and I live on 48 Gresham Lane.
Yeah.
I'd like to come back on the idea that Gresham Lane was chosen because it is a high traffic corridor and would provide good access to transportation and commerce. I'd argue that our location is actually far from ideal. in the sense that it's not really a walkable neighborhood. We looked on Google Maps, it's, 52-minute walk to Redwood City Sequoia Station. So sorry, 36-minute walk, 52-minute walk to downtown Menlo. In terms of shops and restaurant, you have Selby's, KNL. Those are not really that affordable if you've ever been to Selby's. So I would suggest other locations such as Valparaiso, Everton Avenue, which are really walk to town locations specifically to access Menlo Park. There's Alameda, Bay Road, Marsh Road, Valparaiso Avenue, just to name a few. Whilst I understand that the task before you is not an easy one, I think concentrating all the property development projects into one street on one corner of town is, I don't think, in line with the spirit of HCD, quite frankly, which requires you to demonstrate intent to truly integrate and balance the community. Additionally, I think in terms of school, this would place an excessive burden on one sole school district. Selby Lane already has a 24-to-1 student-teacher ratio compared to 15-to-1 in Encino and Las Lomitas. So I think that Selby would be completely saturated. Finally, proposing Gresham Lane as part of the upzoning plan will likely fail because, as was mentioned multiple times, our lot are really small and we will not be selling a home. So I respectfully ask that you would reconsider. Another thing I thought about last night, hearing that accessory dwelling units might be a solution. A couple of years ago, I looked at, building one. My project was not accepted because the back of the proposal was kind of under the drip zone of the trees. I'm happy to work with the town hall to make that project feasible. And I know you need a lot of ADUs, but if that's in the spirit of showing that we're doing something, I would certainly reconsider doing one in my property. Thank you.
All right,
very much.
thank you very much. Thank you for coming. All right, that's all the cards I have. Is there anybody, are there any hands up online?
I do have a comment from Courtney Sue.
All right, go ahead, come up. I don't have a card by you. So, all right. Is there a card on the end of the table? All right,
I don't have.
all right, good. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Francine Miltonberger. I'm at 351 West Oakwood Boulevard. And I do think that my other neighbors who have been advocating for change on this 23 Oakwood, where there are many of us in that community that have experienced increased density in our neighborhood already. So we're talking from a position of knowledge as opposed to suppositions here. My ask is really to seriously consider reducing that from 10 down to something more feasible like 5. And from a perspective of executing it in that neighborhood, my personal sense is that we could probably handle maybe 8 buildings with 2, cars in that per property. But the traffic issues, the flooding issues, they're all very real there. And it does impinge upon a quality of life issue that everybody in the neighborhood, including people in Atherton, who have been enjoying it.
Thank you very much. I did have your card. I just flipped it over early. Thank you. All right, anyone else? Anyone else online?
I do have one. She left a comment and I can read it for the record.
Okay.
This comment is made by Courtney Sue. Hi, I live at 73 Gresham. I am not able to be there in person tonight, but I wanted to voice my disapproval for the record. My husband and I have owned our home here for 10 years and have 10 young children, or 2 young children, sorry. We feel we are being treated unfairly by this proposal. We don't understand the financial feasibility behind this plan. We feel doing the overlay plan along the whole ECR corridor will make a lot more sense and be much more compassionate by sharing the burden. Would you accept this for your own home? Thank you for considering our point of view.
All right, thank you. And we'll make sure that gets printed out and put in the record or printed over to the record, right?
Yeah.
All right, I don't see anybody else in here and I don't see anybody else online, so I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion and if action is appropriate. I've got some things, but if you're ready to go, then,
I got one question. for-
Chairlane, I have one more. I think he's raising his hand, Mr.
Okay.
Avi Sokol.
who is it?
Avi Sokol.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and open the public comment section and bring it back up. Ozzy, did you have something to say? You might be on mute.
Yeah, I have so my name is Avi Sokol. I'm in the Sibelo 78. So I'm actually behind this group of people, nice group of people. So first, I want to make sure that it's clear that it's affecting all of us nearby, not just them themselves. So I don't think that there was enough time for any one of the other neighbor even to respond, because I just got to know about it 10 minutes before this meeting. So this is one. Second, I want to make sure that it's clear that this decision is actually changing the culture of the neighborhood. It's not about if, let's say that you will expand SB9, then maybe it's a more density, but it's not changing the culture of the neighborhood. Right now, the way you are doing it, it's suddenly I have big houses near my house, and this is not what I came for to live in Atherton. So I suggest to somehow expand the SB9 capabilities. And I think that today, maybe with some of the limitation that you have there, you are not encouraging developers to actually take this SB9 and actually work. And this can be in all over Atherton. If people will know that they can take an acre everywhere and split it, then they will do it. And with less limitation of 3 years of living there, might encourage some developer to do it faster. And I think this is much more feasible. So this is my 2 cents.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Anyone else online before I close the public comment?
I have a Yi Ding.
All right, Yi, go ahead.
I would just like to echo the previous commenters' comments. I think doing more to encourage people to use SB9 would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment section again, bring it back for questions and discussion on the commission. Go ahead. Yeah, Harry.
So I want to understand better some of the comments made about good faith submission. So this goes out to Barbara. Barbara, you're special counsel, right?
Yeah, Barbara, you might be on mute.
You're on mute, Barbara.
Sorry.
Okay,
Yes.
are you legal counsel?
Yes.
For the town, and your field of expertise is, among other things, this housing issue?
It's housing elements, yeah.
Okay, so what are the consequences to the town for submitting proposed lots that are not likely to ultimately end up being appropriate properties, that is, properties that are going to be used for housing as intended?
Well, we would never suggest that the town submit something to the state that makes comments, that aren't supportable by the evidence. When the town excuse me, includes non-vacant sites in the housing element, it has to provide some kind of evidence that the sites are likely to be developed in the next 8 years. It also needs to, for these small lots, it also needs to have a lot consolidation program, which I think has been added to the draft that you have. So anything that the town submits needs to be supported by some substantial evidence indicating the truth of the matter.
Is the substantial evidence or likelihood that the lots in question are going to be used within the next 8 years, is that a statutory requirement?
Yeah, it actually is. I'm sorry, I didn't bring my book right with me. I can go get it, but essentially, let's see, I'm trying to think. If I believe that over half the sites designated for low-income housing are in non-vacant sites. And in that case, the town has to make findings that the existing uses are likely to be discontinued in the next 8 years. Or that, or that, for instance, on the school sites, they have an area on the existing sites that can be developed for housing.
So I'll ask one more time for my own clarity. Is there a specific provision in the statute that says that the proposed lots in the judgment of the town are likely to be used within the next 8 years for the intended proposal?
There's a general provision in the town that in the statute that it has to designate sites that are suitable for development in the next 8 years.
Thank you.
Anything else? I don't see Nancy online. Is Nancy still online?
She's still on. Ask her to unmute.
Yes, Nancy's still on.
All right, good, Nancy. Did you have any questions?
No, I'm following this and developing a strong opinion too, just like the rest of them.
Okay. All right, I don't have any questions, but I do have some comments. If we're ready for that. All right, so this is my third planning commission. This first one was when I was 30 and I'm 70 at the end of the month, so it's been a while. 10 years on this planning commission. And if I were to come on to a planning commission and say, okay, I'd like to do a plan based on the numbers and I won't consider traffic or runoff or infrastructure or parking or overall ability to absorb the impact, but go ahead, I would say you wouldn't put me on the planning commission. And the state laws, as it's lined out, does just exactly that. It says you do it, and I know you're not going to like it, but do it. And by the way, you don't have any money for infrastructure. You don't have any money with power grid. That I'm sure you'll work that out. And so I'm really disappointed that this is before the town to deal with, all towns to deal with. The approach we have to take, though, is to be accepted so that we can go on to the next phase. So a couple of questions I had for staff, back to my earlier question about SB 9. SB 9 is too limiting for the community to expect it to work well for us, I think, because people who are on a 5-acre lot are probably not going to split it in two and live in a 2.5-acre home or duplex after they've lived on a 5-acre lot with a 4,000 square foot home. But people with a 2-acre lot or a 4-acre lot might split it if they didn't have to meet that requirement. So if the town were to make that available to individuals, you can split your lot, and we could even incentivize it with lower fees, as long as you develop the other property gets developed. It might make our number, first of all, it would get the lot sizes easier to deal with. It would also make it so that we can make our number without doing what I consider to be abnormal things. I think the idea of multifamily along El Camino is a good idea. I think this method is not. The collecting, I mean, if we could, particularly the homes that are right off of behind El Camino. So I think that'll be a tough thing to be expecting it to be approved by the state. So consequently, our first proposal I felt was going to put us on the radar screen in a big way by just saying ADUs will cover it, and it did. If the second proposal comes out to be unbelievable, it will put us as a bigger target on the radar screen in terms of what we'll be forced to do. So I think we really need to come up with a much more comprehensive strategy on how to incentivize lot splits that are easier to do on larger lots. And the notion of coming up with a way that make that number viable is much more believable to me and much more believable to those who are going to review it. in terms of the 10 units on Oakwood, I think that actually works out to be more than 10 because of the density bonus for a low income housing. So it makes it more like 18 units rather than just 16. So I think that's makes driving up and down that street, you can just barely do it now without a crosswalk person helping you drive down it, let alone walk across it. So the traffic issue on that street in particular isn't conducive towards 18 units. So I'm okay with a density that's more than what it is because we have a developer that wants to do that. I think that his plans that he even brought before the planning commission for what he has in mind are look like a home that would be, that would fit right into those neighborhoods. So I think that we can come up with a way to make that less than 10 or make sure that it doesn't get the density bonus, that would be important. I just don't see any way that the plan as proposed with the El Camino lots in the neighborhood who's not interested in doing it is going to be anything other than put us on a radar screen in a very ugly way. All right. So the problem I have is the timing, because if we don't have something by the 31st, then it gets exponentially worse. Developers can come in and say, hey, there's no rules. Well, we'll do that. We don't even have to make multifamily. We can just make a bigger property and we don't have to worry about setbacks. We can just put it 4 feet away from the edge of the property and I'll build a 15,000 square foot place and you guys will get used to it. So the downside of this from a short term, not having a plan is unacceptable. The downside to submitting to the state a plan that we don't honestly believe is viable is unacceptable because that'll allow for a period of time where a developer can come in and say, okay, I'm going to assume that doesn't get accepted. I'm going to propose something that doesn't conform with anything right now. If you don't get accepted, then I get to build that anyway. So all those scenarios don't work with what I see this proposal. Now, would I rather have this than nothing? Yes, and the reason for that is because rezoning doesn't force the sellers to sell, they are in control of their fate. So would I rather have that than have somebody who is renting the property now, take that property, assemble with 2 other people that are renting and build something that's 3 stories right there because there's no regulations? I'd much rather have that. So I don't know, Lisa, you can tell me, since there's only 3 of us, we've got to get 3 to vote on something to recommend to the commission. And I've told the staff and at least one of the town council members that I wasn't comfortable with the approach, and I didn't hear about this until like last week. What is the next step for us to make the best recommendation we can to the town council so that they know our opinion and still not make it so we don't have anything on the 31st? Do we have to approve tonight to get the next step going? Or can we say we can approve with these recommended changes? What can we do?
Yeah, I think the staff would like you to make a recommendation with, and you can have some suggestions in there that we can carry forward to the council. And does the deputy city attorney have comments you wanted to make?
I just wanted to clarify that because there's 3 of you, we only need 2. We need a majority of those commissioners present for a decision.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So if you had a recommendation with modifications, then we can bring that forward to the city council.
All right, Terry, you got any
The
idea?
city manager would like to speak as well.
Oh, okay, good.
Quick clarification from Lisa and any others, including Andreas. If the council makes substantive changes to the housing element on January 31st, we will not make the deadline because they cannot adopt that substantive changed document on January 31st without a 7-day noticing period.
Yeah, I think Barbara Kautz can respond to that because her reading of the law is that the 7-day notice is required before it's submitted to HCD, not before it's adopted, but I'll Barbara clarify.
Are you on mute? You're on mute. There you go. You're on mute.
You're still muted, Barbara.
I know, I can't unmute myself.
No.
Sorry.
You know how that works.
The 7-day there's a 7-day posting period required before a housing element is sent to HCD. That doesn't apply to the city.
So we could implement it as a town decision, and then it's 7 days, 7-day posting, so the state, before we submit to the state. Is that how it works?
Yes, yes.
So let me,
Yeah.
could you clarify that one more time for me?
Right.
We adopt it on January 31st with whatever changes we want to make? And then do what? And
Then
have we
post
met
it for,
that- Post it for 7 days and submit it to HCD, but isn't there a
Right.
requirement that we adopt and self-certify by January 31st, or February 1st, we're still open to a builder's remedy solution regardless?
yes, I wanted to clarify, the builder's remedy solution only applies to a project that would have 20% low-income housing. So
I
it would
get-
not
I get that,
apply.
Barbara, I get that.
Yeah,
Barbara,
yeah,
but
yeah.
But
But
a single-family home with an ADU dedicated as affordable considered to be a builder's remedy sustainable project? I mean, Chair Lane alluded to that as well. It doesn't have a minimum number of units.
I guess that's correct. If somebody were to do that.
So there's,
Anyone.
But
could submit.
regardless, yes, it is theoretically correct that somebody could come in on February 1st if the town doesn't adopt a housing element consistent with state law by January 31st with a builder's remedy project.
so if the commission, if the town council on the 31st agreed to changes and adopted it then February 1st would be the adoption date. Is that how it would work?
No, January 31st would be the adoption date.
January
The
1st.
date,
So
yeah, the
that-
date
that-
that would,
So that
Yeah.
would be the decision of the town, and then there'd be 7-day posting to go to the state. But during that 7-day period, we're still covered by what was adopted on the 31st. Is that correct?
that's correct.
So.
I mean,
now let me
right.
walk back a
Right.
public policy perspective
Right.
issue for the town.
Right.
So let's say the council or the planning commission says, let's do broader overlays throughout town, across El Camino, across Valparaiso, spread it out a little more. None of those property owners have received
Right, I know.
notice as well.
I know.
So
Yeah.
there's no way our city council would adopt that on
Right.
January 31st with
Right.
those changes.
That's correct. Yeah. All right. Yeah, we have, Lisa, we have. I need you to, I need everybody to, we need to have the commission doing this. We're trying to help here. All right. So Lisa, you had a question?
To be clear, the town council does not have to follow our recommendation, correct?
That's correct.
That, yeah, the town council doesn't have to follow our recommendation. The town council, which we've experienced before. All right, I mean, here, Lisa, you gotta tell me how viable is the ability to make a concept like an easier SB9 work? Make it an SB9 type equivalent without the requirement to be there for 2 years. And that would be the
Right, so
town.
yeah.
choice.
We can recommend that the occupancy limitation living on the property be removed from the ordinance. It's also very difficult to enforce, and that's been acknowledged. So I think that is a recommendation you can make that could easily be implemented.
And that makes our SB9 numbers look more viable to me.
Yeah, I think the state still had concern that we don't have a track record yet of
Well,
this
we've
type
heard-
of development. And I tried to explain to them, yeah, because you just passed the
Yeah,
law.
Right.
Give us a chance. But I do agree that Atherton is a great community for these SB9 units because of the size of the lots compared to other communities in the state.
Right. But
So
the idea,
they're just not seeing that development in other places. But we have had a good level of interest here and we've documented that in the housing element.
well, it's very, very, I mean, of all the scenarios that would be viable to me about this town is that somebody would have a 5-acre lot and say, well, I want to sell my lot. I want to divide it into two. I'm going to sell it to a developer and they're going to develop a home with a JDU in it because they want their mother-in-law unit attached to the house and the other one has an ADU and a house and they have a 2.5 acre lots and everybody feels like they have enough room. And we have enough room for parking on the site rather than trying to cram 20 people on too small a site with no parking. And the fact that they were only allowed to provide one parking spot, you know, back in the day, you know, they around the BART stations over in the East Bay, they said, well, they only allow one parking spot for their development. And guess what? The neighborhood filled up with cars because people showed up with 2 cars, one for their husband, one for the wife. And so the idea that we can't control parking is a problem. Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But we also have to remember that SB 9 and ADUs don't solve the multifamily issue.
Right.
That we still have to
I agree.
identify
I
in
agree.
town. So we still need
Right.
multifamily somewhere that
Right.
needs to be identified and planned out.
Right.
And the state wants us to identify potential SB 9 lots.
Right.
And we have no idea who's going to do an SB 9 development. And lastly, ADUs, they don't believe are considered
Right. I understand.
or inclusive.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Because everybody's doing it to the relative rather than to a poor person they don't know. I got it. All right. So, so I'm comfortable recommending this to the town council with the suggestion that they come up with a SB 9 like waiver. But I can't recommend it the way it is. And I know that the town council will probably be going ahead with the situation over on El Camino, just because of the issue about the state is mandating not smart planning things, just plain not smart planning things. And for us to be stuck with this is a bad thing. And all the communities that I hear about are having the same problem, except Alameda. The other issue will happen in 2 years when nobody's meeting their plan and they come back and they say, you're not meeting your plan. So what are you going to do to make it worse? And hopefully by that time, somebody wakes up in Sacramento and says, you know, this is a really bad idea. And so the only thing we can't have happen is we can't have a situation where the state says, you guys don't get it, we'll help. And when that happens, do you think this is a bad plan? You haven't seen a bad plan yet. The overlay gets us into a situation where my whole thing about how we get this to work is by incentivizing the right actions, not mandating them. So if we come up with a way to make it feel like, okay, I get a good deal out of this, I get to split my property and I make money, then you're going to have a situation where it's more viable. I've got a 5 acre, but the overlay, I don't think the overlay works either, because all those people in the overlay area are going to be right here with a bigger crowd saying the same thing. All right. So I can't be talking back and forth. All right. So I'll go based on what you guys think. Perry, Nancy.
Can I just ask
Yeah.
can I see that petition?
Okay.
That's okay. I'll give it
We're not
back
going
to
to keep it. He just wants to read through, see the addresses, I think. Yeah, I understand. He just wants to see it. And the reason we're looking at it is from the standpoint of the viability of this being included in the plan and what the words say relative to that. And also he's a lawyer, so. Right. That's cut and dry, right? Thank you.
Okay, so I am not going to support the proposal because I'm not satisfied that the town has fully investigated the likelihood that these particular properties are going to be used for their intended purpose.
Right.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Thank you. I think I heard the commission express some interest in an overlay zone. Staff had concern about that when it was applied to very limited properties.
Right.
Because it would be difficult to justify, right, that these properties would develop, the single family use would probably remain. I do think though that if it was expanded to more properties, that may be a more viable option. And that was something that we had presented as an option very early on in this process to the city council.
All right.
So
So
if that's something that the planning commission was interested in recommending, and you were to define what that expanded area would be, we could notify those property owners of your recommendation prior to the city council meeting.
okay, so can you clarify the label? Overlay zone and what it actually means as opposed to just a label of it, because I think it
Certainly.
means many things at
Right,
different
so the
times.
difference between an overlay zone and just a simple upzoning
Right.
multifamily is that you would have actually two zoning districts apply. So their R1A or R1B zoning regulations would remain in effect. They could choose to apply the overlay zone. And we would recommend that be at a density of 20 units per acre because that's the default density that HCD accepts as being appropriate for affordable housing. So they could elect to build at that 20 units an acre, or they could remain legally conforming at the single family use. And that's something we would only recommend if it was applied to a much greater area than the limited properties we have discussed tonight.
Yeah, but the problem with that from the standpoint of the timing is that those people would be included in the overlay zone would want to be heard too.
Right, so they would receive notification following this meeting, and they could speak at the January 31st city council meeting.
And as the council heard recommendations about what the overlay zones could be in previous comments, I
We
think
did
early on.
discuss it extensively previously, and it was actually included in the draft housing element that
that's
was
right.
released for public review, and then it
Right.
was removed prior to submission to HCD.
Right,
So the
'cause I-
council's familiar with the concept.
I had read one like that.
Yeah, I
before.
think the concern is if it's just a small amount of properties, it's unlikely to change over. Where I think as members of the public indicated, if you have more properties, it's more likely somebody may elect to build with the multifamily scenario.
And if the overlay zone is expanded territory is only 10, there's, the state doesn't accept that at all.
They do not accept it as the default density for affordable housing, but they would accept it as multifamily housing, just not counting in the affordable categories.
Well, so, yeah, so there's no such thing as affordable housing in Atherton unless it's subsidized. So if somebody came up with a way to subsidize any housing, you know, our 1959 home in the Fair Oaks area, clearly, which was bought in 1987, by the way, it could qualify. So, I mean, what I'm looking for is the fact that 20 units per acre is tough to find a place for in Atherton, except on a major thoroughfare. Just because of all the things that everybody's talked about from a traffic standpoint in other areas. So it's hard for me to see a 20 per acre place that we have at real legitimate access to. But we could have access, so we could figure out a subsidy for 10.
Yeah, and understand that 20 is the maximum you would build, right? That's the maximum density. Somebody could choose to build at a lower density. And typically a multifamily zoning district would be defined as 4 units or more, and then that max would be at 20. So they would
Right.
have the ability to build within that range. And given the property values in Atherton, it might be that they build larger units at the lower density rather than max out the density.
Because of the value that they would have.
And we're seeing that in other communities. We're actually seeing larger units built, and some communities are establishing higher minimum densities to try to adjust for that and get
Okay.
smaller units built. And
Alright.
I'm not recommending that here, but I'm
Right.
letting you know what other communities are doing.
All right, so George, we're gonna make you have more sleepless nights, I think. All right, so Nancy, did you have anything you want to add at this point?
No, I'm just sort of following along here because this is obviously an unpopular topic and it's going to be very difficult to deal with, and I feel that it is.
Right. All right, so Lisa, I can make a motion if you can help me with the idea of how we would go about encapsulating what we discussed in such a way that you could take it forward to the council.
Well, I think I'd be interested to hear if you're
anybody-
interested in considering the overlay in an expanded area, what that expanded area might be.
Yeah. The problem with the overlay is I don't think it creates new problems that'll make this tough to get done by the 31st. So I'm concerned that if we make the recommendation to the overlay, which does make sense, whatever recommendation we make to the council has to be within the realm of their ability to do it on the 31st. I don't think an expanded 20 unit overlay has any possibility of being something they could accept on the 31st. So I'm interested in making a recommendation to them on ways we can add to the framework of what they propose, such that it allows them to have more flexibility in terms of hitting a number. So George, and I'm letting George speak because he's part of the town side of things.
So if you make a recommendation with an expanded overlay to the city council that they would then consider as a recommendation of the planning commission on January 31st, the council is going to need very clear understanding of what the ramifications are of an adoption and what that on January 31st, but not submission, or what the timing is for all of that from legal folks in order for them to consider it. I think they would gladly consider something broader that makes more sense that we can submit to HCD. We just don't want to get into that January 31st legal deadline. We've missed that statutory deadline. Now we're subject to not only builder's remedy issues, but penalties from HCD, financial penalties as well. That could be automatic and we have no control over.
Right.
So they need some clear legal opinion along with that recommendation. And that may come from both Barbara and Mona and Andreas as to how we navigate that.
Okay.
But if they had that option, they would certainly consider it.
All right, so Lisa,
And given if it's a planning commission recommendation, it's something that we can then draft up. We can
Okay.
add as an amendment to the housing element included in the staff report, and it gives us the ability to notify the property owners. I don't have the ability to notify people without a recommendation from the planning commission.
right, because we don't know what areas we're talking about. So let's go back to that draft. I think we've got the draft one here, right? Do we have the draft in our packet? So it's or on the list that I copied off the internet. I've got their, let's see. So maybe you've got quicker access to it than I do. I say the resolution, I see revised housing element. That doesn't look like the draft. Let me see, I know I saw a draft in the list that I copied. Hold on. Do you have a list of the properties in the original draft? Go ahead.
The list of properties that are currently,
No, that were in the part of the overlay proposal that the council.
oh, yeah, I think the planning commission could probably come up with some thoughts that are reasonable for the overlay. It was previously very limited to a few properties that were interested in being developed. I think 170 Atherton was one of them, 23 Oakwood. I think this scenario is a little different tonight. You're
Right.
talking about maybe the overlay on the length of El Camino, and
Yes.
the length of Valparaiso.
Yes.
So I'm
right.
open to what your
Atherton
thoughts are
Avenue,
on
Atherton Avenue, or what was?
what streets you would like to include. And if you were to keep it broader, the city council has the option to narrow that down at the meeting as well.
All right, well, so I don't have a map here in front of me, but I think I can pull it up. So isn't there a list that came in the original conversations? I went back when we were doing the communications early on during the first sessions we had.
Yeah, we had several properties on Bay Road, on Marsh, at 170 Atherton, 23 Oakwood, and I think a few El Camino properties.
Right.
So I don't know if you want to look at a map and decide what locations you'd like to designate, rather than go off that old list.
No, I don't have any, so tonight, I don't want to sit there and randomly choose properties. What I would like to do is choose from the list of the original list that we looked at for inclusion in the overlay.
Yeah, I think that list was a bit limited on sites. And, yeah.
It was, although in February of 2022, if either Sung or somebody could pull up the agenda packet from February of 2022, there was your original recommendations for overlay that were broader. They went back a half mile in for multimodal transit in some cases, but it's a visual map of what staff was originally talking about for an overlay proposal.
Yeah, that's the one I'd like to pull up if we can find it.
It was February council meeting 2022.
All right, so here's the balance that I'm trying to do right now. I'm trying to balance the framing of something that's viable for the for the council to consider with not being shoot from the hip. All right, there's the gap there that I want to get. I want to be on the far end of making a recommendation to the council that's viable. So if we need to take about a 5-minute break for us to find the data, if we want to do that, can we do that? All right, so I'll go ahead and put us in a, let's see, what time is it right now? It's 7:41. So let's reconvene at midnight. No. Well, let's take a, let's come back at 7:50. R10 overlay on Valparaiso, on the properties along One Deep on Valparaiso. That will give us a significant ability to have flexibility in terms of the homes that'll fit well into the Valparaiso neighborhoods, and give a lot of flexibility on what to do on both sides of El Camino. And El Camino is a channel that the county has made the official Menlo. You go down to Menlo Park, you go up to Redwood City, all the way to San Bruno. That's the national or the local area for this type of housing potential. So with that, I would make that recommendation to change, as well as making it the SB9 characteristics available to all properties in Atherton. Can I say of a certain size or bigger or not?
It currently applies townwide. I think your interest was removing that residency requirement. for
Right.
Property ownership.
Right.
But it currently applies townwide.
Right, but the question would be, is that what I'm looking at doing is on the town ordinance that we allow the non-residence requirement on a certain size acre or above, not on any property. So I'm not looking for somebody with a 1/4 acre lot to split it in two and then leave. I'm looking for somebody with a 5 acre lot to split it, or a 2 acre lot to split it. So I want to put a minimum on the acreage that we would waive that waive that option if we can.
And what was the minimum? I'm sorry.
I don't know, 2 acres, I was thinking a neighbor of 2 acres or 1 acre.
So if you split a lot and and the resulting lot size is 1 acre, that complies with the town subdivision ordinance. So they wouldn't have to invoke the SB 9 provisions. Smaller than that, they would.
So.
Go ahead.
I think what Chair Lane is trying to say that is if there's a 1 acre lot, that they could split it via SB 9 without having the residency requirement.
Okay, 1 acre then, 1 acre is the limit then.
And then if there's lots that are less than 1 acre, then they
They
would
have to
still
go-
need the residency
The-
requirement.
Yeah, that's right, correct. All right, thank you. That's what I'm sure that's what I said. All right, so let's propose that they make eliminate the residence requirement for 1 acre lots and bigger. Because people in a 5 acre lot that would want to split them would just fall under our normal thing. They wouldn't have to comply. All right, very good. So we just expanded the number of lots that would qualify to 1 acre. And then expand the overlay on El Camino on both sides and for on R20, and then expand the overlay and then add the overlay on Valparaiso for R10. All right, and I'm gonna let the council decide on the Oakwood because I think that's too dense and I don't have a density that I can recommend below R10, so below the 10 that we have on the book. So I think that the 16, which will actually be 18 properties on that or units on that site is too dense for that traffic situation on that site. So I would not recommend that. So do we need to make a motion to that effect?
We would appreciate a motion, and in addition to that recommendation that you had with the new overlay, also the motion would authorize staff to provide additional analysis as requested by HCD, in particular for the added multifamily sites that you mentioned, special needs population, extremely low, emergency shelter, housing condition, and access to transit.
Yeah, and I'm adding that because I know you like to work weekends. That's going to be a lot of work on your behalf, Lisa and Zung. So I appreciate the help on this. So Perry, does that make sense to you? All right. And Nancy, are you still on, right?
Yes,
battery
I'm
might-
here. I just had to unmute myself.
All right, that's fine. So did you understand what I was recommending then on that?
Pretty much.
All right, so we're ready to make, I need a motion, I make that motion, I need a second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Can I have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Lerner,
Yes.
Commissioner Naransic,
Yes.
Commissioner Conce and Vice Chair Lamb are absent. Chair Lane,
Yes. And I'll offer my help to the I'll put in quotes, help to the council in any way that they want to talk about what we were trying to do tonight, as well as trying to make sure that we're actually turning something in that gets accepted, because that's going to be the most important thing to the town and the surrounding neighborhoods, that we get something accepted, because if not, you'll see an R30 on Oakwood. So we want to make sure that we come up with something that's accepted. All right, anything else, Lisa, that we need?
No, that's it for this evening. Thank you.
All right. So we get our normal wage rate for this meeting, right? Oh, that's right. We're free. All right. So anything else we need to cover at this meeting? Because we have another opportunity next Wednesday for our regular meeting where we have other items. Anything else, Sung?
no staff reports by staff this evening.
All right, and nothing from this council member for staff for commissioner reports, anything? All right, Nancy, you're all clear?
Yeah, I'm all clear.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting. You have all right, I'll open up public comment for that clarification. Go ahead. I might need you by the mic.
Yeah, so,
All right.
thank you, appreciate it. Just a clarification, are you also, as part of your proposal, removing the upzoning of the El Camino lots that you just talked about it?
They'd be replacing the upzoning with the
Replacing
overlay.
with the upzoning.
That's
We're
what they're
replacing
doing.
the upzoning with an overlay, which allows the owners of the property now to keep them and be in compliance with a single family home if they want to. Some of you brought up the idea that they wouldn't be able to rebuild their house or do other things. With the overlay, you'd still be able to keep it. And the upzoning for the longer period of time, for the longer length, all the way up both sides of El Camino, gives more viability to the idea that a development could occur. But it still allows for it to happen if lots are combined. But it doesn't take away from the ability for the landowner to knock their house down and build a brand new one on that property as a single family unit. Without the overlay, you wouldn't have that opportunity.
Without the overlay, I would not have it.
Yes,
With an
correct.
Overlay, I can.
Yes, you
have
can
my
knock it
current-
down and rebuild.
Knock it down and rebuild it, keep it the
Right.
same way it is.
That's correct.
We don't.
Right, all right. All right. All right, all right. Real quick, yeah.
Thank you. Just asking for a clarification on the recommendation you gave tonight was for the overlay zones on the El Camino and Valparaiso, 20 per acre and 10 per acre respectively. But I believe your recommendation also was that Oakwood at 10 per acre. You did not recommend that. Is that correct?
I did not recommend it. I'm going to leave it to the council on that one. It seems too dense for me. So that's our recommendation.
So is that part of the record?
That's part of the record. Is that part of the record?
A
It
part
is,
of the
right?
motion? that
My
you just-
understanding of it was not included in the motion to change that
Right.
site, but that you had noted as a commissioner that you have concern with the
correct.
density at that
That's correct.
location, but it
That's-
was not included in your motion.
That's correct.
Is there any chance that you would include it?
I can't because we can't get a majority to agree to that. So I want to make sure that we
What
just,
majority are you referring to, the commissioners or the staff?
the commission, the staff doesn't have a vote.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So, but it's noted in it and it has been also stated to them in person, at least one of them.
Well, I think that what you guys.
I
have
need
done-
to stop. All right,
Thank
all right. So, George, you had something you want to add?
I do. I believe the city attorney, Andreas, I think Mona's trying to join. City attorney wants to make sure that as part of this motion, which I understand is Valparaiso, 10 units per acre. One side of Valparaiso, El Camino, both sides of El Camino, 20 units per acre overlay. And then with any other caveats that the commission.
And
may
then,
added.
those are the own additions to it. And I just added my own personal opinion about Oakwood.
Oakwood, right.
Right.
So the city attorney's got some comments she would like to add regarding notice and how this gets to the city council for January 31st, so they could actually process it on that particular date. It's
All
gonna
right, good.
require a lot of.
All right, go ahead. You're up.
Yeah.
Is she on? You still on?
Mona, I think you have.
Good
to
evening,
unmute.
Chairlane. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, great, thank you. It's my understanding that the Planning Commission wanted to, the decision before you tonight is to make a recommendation one way or another on the housing element considered by the City Council, at which point the final housing element will be decided by the City Council on January 31st. However, the Planning Commission has requested a number of changes for the council's consideration. So my recommendation to the Planning Commission tonight is to state exactly what it is that you would like so that it's very clear to the public and staff and that we can make those changes, articulate those in a notice to be published and distributed to impacted property owners, and then present that to the council. Again, my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that instead of the upzoning of the properties along El Camino Real to Redwood City, the commission wishes to remove the upzoning and instead have an overlay zone that impacts the properties on both sides of El Camino Real, some of the units on Valparaiso, and keep the 23 Oakwood. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, so staff can include that as part of the Planning Commission's recommended actions. And I don't know if you have requested this expressly, and if you haven't, I would like to seek the Planning Commission's authorization of staff to make some clarifying changes that are not substantive in nature, but that will help the readability in terms of the housing element. So I would like some authorization on that. And then finally,
So say that one more time with that last part. What is that again?
authorization to make clarifying changes to the housing element that will not change the substance of what has been decided tonight for approval, but that will help the readability of the document.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Patty's okay. Nancy's okay with that. Yep. All right. That makes sense. What's the
Great.
next item? Next.
And
point?
then this is for you to decide, but if you want to provide any clarity on some of the programs that we've identified previously on lot consolidation, incentivizing that program, for example, because as you know, those smaller lots are still part of the overlay zone. So if you do want any kind of incentive program to be considered and proposed.
That is already in the draft housing element. And so you could continue to have that program.
But to enhance it, so we discussed the lot consolidation program, but to add additional incentives to encourage property owners to consider consolidating the smaller half-acre lots to bigger ones so that the possibility of multifamily exists, so that it's not just an idea, but it's capable of and feasible to be achieved.
So what type of incentive are you talking about?
They can include setback, they could include streamline review, they could include reduction in application fees. Those will be addressed later when we actually devise the program. But for now, you can decide whether you would even like that to be considered.
Well, I definitely don't want to be, I don't want the setback to be considered. I think setback is the one thing that is the most annoying because it just dumps windows right into people's backyard. So I don't want to have flexibility around the setback, but I don't mind the streamlined and I don't mind the reduced fees and things like that. But I definitely don't want to deal with it. I don't want people to be, whatever goes in there has to be considerate of the people there. And that means that windows don't point into people's backyards and plants are planted to make sure that they start off being able to shield, not like in 20 years. So those are the things that make this work. I visit my kids down in LA all the time, and it's like there's no garages anymore. Everybody's living in a garage and all the cars are parked on the streets. And then right next to the house that doesn't want to sell, there's this 4-story apartment house looking into their backyard. And people have tents over their backyard, so they have a backyard privacy. So that we don't want, the one thing, okay, I'm gonna get on my soapbox for a minute. All right, I first came to Atherton in 1962 in the back of a 1960 Valiant because my dad was going to law school at Hastings. And the only thing we could afford to do was go on a trip. And the trip we went to was to see all the expensive houses down in Woodside and Atherton and Palo Alto. And we go up and down the street. And I said, man, it'd be nice to be in a community like this. This is a community type that has to exist as a place that people want to think about growing into. All right. Now I had to marry into it to get it here, by the way, but 23 years ago, I moved here, and my wife bought the house in 1987 for $440,000, by the way. So it was the idea is that when this type of housing is a desirable mix within a community. That community is as big as the peninsula. So the idea that every town has to be this cookie counter combination of things that the state is choosing right now is not an appropriate regional plan. It's just not. There are places that need to be density. There's places that need to have backyards. There's reasons for all those things, and that's why the communities develop that way. To the degree that we sort of make everything this sort of generic community, it's just bad planning. And to do it as a retrofit for a community that doesn't have the roads for it and the setbacks for it and everything else is just plain bad planning. So what we're trying to do by this action tonight is to give the community a channel for being accepted, flexibility to keep what they have, and the acceptance by the state so they don't come in here and change this radically and make it make it just something we don't want to be a part of. So.
So how about if I can,
I think, Mona, we already have the lot consolidation program in the housing element. And so if we can take another look at expanding that, but it is in there as an.
I
incentive
understand
and-
it's in there. I think that I just want to make sure that because we have lots that are less than half an acre, that we identify ways in which we will actually make development feasible, because that is something that HCD looks at. But hearing what you have had to say, Chair Lane, and again, for the Planning Commission's consideration, we can add language that says, identify incentives that streamline and facilitate development of those properties without impacting neighboring properties. And that way it marries the idea of providing, incentivizing, but not impacting existing residents.
I think the wording has to be minimizing, because anything of higher density impacts.
That's a
So
great
it's-
point.
Yeah.
Sure, minimizing, that's a great point. And then the final request that I had was just to authorize staff that we go ahead and notify neighbors. And we will include kind of the highlighted areas that the Planning Commission believes that the enhanced overlay zones should be. And so that way they will understand what is being proposed for the city council's consideration on the 31st.
And I would say.
We've already
that-
got that as part of the recommendation from earlier.
And it's,
Perfect.
and it's, I would say that, that it's really critical that the packet that goes out includes the clear definition of that, of overlay and the differentiation in terms of the landowner, the current landowner having the ability to keep the property they have in the framework that they have it right now, if they choose to. Because I think the phrasing of overlay is not immediately understood by others, and they don't understand the flexibility that creates for their property ownership. And I think it's really important to get that point across, because one of the hardest problems about this whole issue is the fact that people who know stuff, and people who don't get left out all the time. And so we've got to do a better job of making sure they understand this is not a mandate to change your property. It's an attempt to make sure that the town keeps the character of the town we can, given the current laws.
And that, just to echo some additional, that notice, Lisa, needs to craft, or needs to articulate that these are the recommendations that the Planning Commission is recommending that the City Council incorporate into the adoption of the housing element on January 31st. And it's part of that PC notice that goes out for that meeting with the 7 days in advance.
All right, does that give you what you need, George? All right, and Lisa, does that give you all sleepless nights between now and the 31st? All right, anything I can do to help? All right. Anything else, Perry? Nancy?
No,
Anything
I'm
else?
okay.
All right, good. Then we're gonna go ahead and I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second, and I don't know, wait a minute, do I really want to second? No, I'll second. Roll call, please.
Chair Lane,
Andreas?
Yes.
Through the chair,
Yes.
it was pointed out that you didn't include in the motion the lot consolidation incentive. And so if you want to amend the motion.
I'll
to include
amend,
that.
is that okay to amend for the people that voted? Well, so Nancy, you're okay with amending the lot
Sure.
consolidation? Okay.
Sure.
All right, good. So we'll make that amendment. So then now can I go with the roll call on the closing of the meeting?
yes. Commissioner Lerner,
Yes.
Commissioner Narensec,
Yes.
Commissioner Conce and Vice Chair Lamb are absent. Commissioner Lane,
Abstain. No, yes.
thank you.
I'll go. Yes. All right. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for staying. Thank you for being great citizens. Appreciate it.